Hey there, my fellow lunatics, and welcome to Dakon's Madhouse. Hey there, everybody. In my last video, I went over the importance of spawn cells, controlling mob spawns, and even built a basic farm using those concepts. Today, we're going to go over some more advanced techniques, including kill zones and how to create different types of harvest zones where you can funnel enemies and collect all the loot. But before we do, I need to correct an error in my last video. I forgot to credit the one person who taught me all of this information in the first place, the granddaddy of mob farming, Zero Gravitas. His Steam guide and his patience answering all of my stupid questions has been invaluable over the last 2 years. Now, let's get this started. There are multiple methods for eliminating mobs. Whether you are using an active design or a docile farm design, you really need to create some kind of kill zone to ensure that you have eliminated all of the mobs and that their loot is ready for harvest. Now let's begin by just going over the different methods for eliminating mobs. There are traps. The wood trap, craftable at the basic workbench. These are the weakest traps, but are safe for the player to walk over. Hive trap. These traps are found in the hive biome. They will damage players if you walk over them, but they do more damage than the wooden traps. Spike trap. Craftable at the tin workbench, these traps are easy to make and efficient in doing damage. They are the most common trap used in mob farming, and they do not damage the player either. Poison trap. The poison trap does almost double the damage the spike trap does, but it isn't craftable. Found in mazes, dungeons, and other scenes, these traps will damage players and monsters, adding a poison effect as well. The Galaxite trap. Crafted at the Galaxite workbench, these are the strongest traps. They are also the most expensive. They don't damage the player, but most people don't really use them in mob farms, as by the time you can really afford them, you're probably not going to be using traps in your farm in general. There are pros and cons to using traps. You will get access to traps early in the game, they are cheap, and they are effective for early mob farm designs. But they lack the ability to organize loot flow. Loot just stays where the mob dies. As such, you have to enter the mob farm to loot it, and this becomes a problem with larger and more dangerous farms. Even if you use conveyors in most of the farm and only have a couple of traps in a single spot, you still need to use magnetic rings or enter the farm, or you have to expose your robot arms and risk them being broken. And if that happens, then mobs can escape the farm. Turrets. Stone turrets. Found in mazes and desert temples, these turrets do not require power, but they will target players as well as monsters. They cannot be crafted. Galaxite turrets. These turrets are crafted, and they are crafted at the Galaxite workbench. These are the most commonly used turrets in mob farms. They do require power, but they can effectively kill any mob. Turrets have issues when you try to mix and match. Stone turrets will break Galaxite turrets and vice versa. However, stone turrets don't break other stone turrets, and Galaxite turrets don't break other Galaxite turrets. Mobs don't aggro on turrets in general, but they can break them if they are fighting another mob. In active farms, there is always a risk that your turrets will break, and you may need to periodically do maintenance on your farm to put broken turrets back in place. In my experience, having a gap of 2 to 3 tiles between your turrets and the ground that the mobs stand on can be helpful in preventing your turrets from breaking, but it isn't perfect, and it's definitely not required. I have had plenty of success with a gap of only 1 tile. Materializers. These let you control what kind of mob you summon. I recommend using either mold tentacles or the orbital turret. These mobs are very effective at clearing out enemies, though the orbital turret won't attack Mimites and the mold tentacle won't attack infected cavelings. Materializers can be challenging to get since they only spawn in the Shimmering Frontier and you have to beat the alien battle arenas to get them. They can't be crafted, and they require power. Mobs will engage with mobs of an opposing faction that you summon with the materializer. Now, this isn't an issue as long as you have at least a 1-tile gap. Mobs won't be able to break your materializer, and if they kill the materialized mob, it just respawns. Keep your power protected with strong walls, and put your wires under the walls to keep all of that safe. Radiation crystals. These crystals can be found in the Shimmering Frontier and are not targeted by any mobs. They do 80 damage every 2 seconds in a 5-tile radius, but stacking crystals does not do extra damage. Treat them like 2-tile wide sprinklers and spread them out. Spawning mobs to kill other mobs. Kind of like an active farm design, you can mix mobs together in kill zones. If you don't have any materializers yet, you could place mold ground to spawn tentacles instead, or crystal crust to spawn orbital turrets. Now, this won't be as efficient since you will also spawn infective cavelings and mimites that will clutter up the area, but it works. You will likely need to do some maintenance on your farm if you use mob spawn to kill other mobs. For example, I used to use infected tentacles in the past to kill brutes on my mob farms. But the caveling shamans can also kill the tentacles with their ranged attack. So I had to keep an eye on my farm and manually kill shamans until I had built up enough tentacle spawn that it was self-sustaining. There are multiple ways for you to eliminate enemies within a mob farm. If you're using an active farm, most of the enemies will kill each other, but there's always going to be a survivor that needs to be eliminated through other means. Docile farms will absolutely need the kill zones for all forms of mob elimination. Your kill zone terrain should consist of tilled mold ground if you have it. This will slow down the mob's movement speed, keeping them in the zone longer and making it easier for you to eliminate them. By tilling the ground, you are preventing the infected mobs from spawning, so you don't have to worry about them at all. Conveyor belts can also be used to push mobs into specific areas, where you can then set up a variety of different methods to eliminate the enemy. The exact design and shape of these kill zones can vary based on your preferences, the size of your farm, your personal aesthetic choices, as well as the materials that you have available. Here are a couple of different methods that I like to use when I am building my kill zones. Method 1. Zigzag terrain. You can weave terrain into a looping pattern that forces mobs to spend more time within the kill zone. Method 2. Confusing conveyors. By turning your conveyors, you can force the mobs to move onto every single tile along the conveyor path. Method number 3. Harvest rooms. These are large rooms with a single enemy mob type or gaps with turrets, crystals, or materializers, or any other kill type that you want to use. You can just dump all the mobs into this giant room surrounded by turrets, crystals, whatever kill method you prefer. Personally, I like to kind of combine all three by making a large room with zigzag terrain and confusing conveyor belts. Then I fill it with turrets and radiation crystals to ensure that anything that enters the room doesn't leave. So at this point, we've created a kill zone and we've stocked it up with some methods to unalive our mob friends. But what do we do with the loot that they drop? So let's go over some various harvesting methods. Method number 1, magnetic rings and trench coats. You can craft magnetic rings at the jewelry workbench, and the trench coat can be fished up in dirt water or Azios water. These improve your pickup radius and make it easier for you to get items on the other side of walls. Method number 2, conveyor belts. You can use conveyor belts to move items to a specific spot so that you can easily grab them. And method number 3, robot arms. Robot arms will pick up loot on the tile in front of it and move it to the tile behind it. That can be a chest or another conveyor belt or just the ground. You can even chain robot arms over gaps to move loot between farm sections that need to stay isolated. Robot arms are also able to pick up items through walls if that item is on the same tile as the wall. Use a conveyor belt to push the item into the wall, and the robot arm can grab it from the other side. Let's take this active farm example from my last video. Currently, it has a very simple kill zone, which is just a couple of poison spike traps in the main farm area, with conveyors funneling the mobs into that spot. To harvest with this current design, you need to use magnetic rings. This is a very low effort design and it works fine, but I want to improve it, so let's do that. Okay, so what we're going to do is we are going to start by placing down some mold ground, and we're going to place it down essentially right in front of where the two traps are. And then I'm gonna clean up some of this terrain here because we don't need it. All right, now I want to keep some gaps. So I know that I am going to, let's get this terrain. I know that I want to put a radiation crystal right here. And I know that I'm going to want one a little bit further away. Let's say probably, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, probably about right there. Let's get radiation suit on so that I don't die. And yeah, that's good. With radiation crystals here and here, that's within kill territory, and they overlap just slightly. Now I want to make sure that I have a gap of 2 tiles. We're going to have to make this a little bit bigger. That's fine. All right, let's dig out some of this ground that I'm not going to use. Okay, so now I have my zigzag terrain that I'm going to use. Let's till it so that it doesn't spawn any mobs. Get my scarlet hoe. Till all this ground. Okay, great. And now let's get rid of these extra ground that I don't need. So I'm going to put zigzag conveyor belts here. So I'm going to start facing this way, because I know that the 2 that are going to be where the wall is right now, those 2 are going to be facing down. And I'm just going to keep on turning it, slowly moving my character across as many of these as I can. Now you know you're going to have to adjust a little to make sure that the mobs actually move properly. But I like to use myself as the example, because it keeps moving me along, and if it keeps moving me along, it's going to keep moving the enemies along. All right, so now we've got all of our conveyor belts down, and we are going to also want to put down some turrets. I want my turrets to be at least 2 tiles away. So this is going to be where my turret line is. I'm going to have walls behind that. So we'll put down some ground there. And then we need some ground here for more turrets. I want to make sure that the turrets hit so that they don't get blocked by anything. So I'm not going to put a turret here because that'll just get blocked by the radiation crystal. All right, great. And now let's get some wiring down. You could put wiring on the turrets, but I like to put it under the walls so that there's no way the wiring can get any kind of damage. I'm just going to put the wires down like this behind each one of my turrets. And now they're all also connected so that I can basically just use a single bit of power here in the very center, and that will provide power to all of my turrets along both sides. Now, if I wanted to also add some turrets down below, I could. You'll notice that at the moment they are currently underneath the wires. So if I want to make this consistent with everything else, I'm going to need to push them back 1 tile. Now, you don't have to do that, but you can. Now I'm going to fill all of this in with walls so that it's all protected. And we actually need to go down a little bit further. Let's dig that up. We're going to go down like that. Because what we want is we want this conveyor belt here to push into the wall. So if our wall is right here, the conveyor belts need to be here as well. Now I want to keep this area protected. So I'm going to put a wall there to block off this area. That way none of the mobs can get to my turrets. Now I'm actually going to add one more turret right here at the bottom since I extended my conveyors a little bit longer. I want a turret at the very bottom that's always hitting in case any mobs get stuck down here. I don't want them to become immortal and just stuck there forever. Finally, I'm going to go ahead and put 2 robot arms just on the opposite side of the wall. You'll notice they're already powered because they're powered by this electrical generator. And we're going to finish it up with a double chest so that any loot that comes from here will just go straight into the chest. Okay, I would like to put down just a couple more radiation crystals just so that we cover up everything in the conveyor area. All right, that's better. We'll put it right here instead. It's coming out just a little bit, but it's enough that I can still avoid it. So now we've got everything covered by radiation damage. We've got everything covered by turret damage. And at this point, we can now open up the farm and let it rip. And so here we have it. The kill zone is put together. We've got the zigzag terrain, the confusing conveyors. We have radiation crystals and turrets all set up to bring all the loot all the way to the bottom. And robot arms are set up to grab all the loot and put it into storage. Now you may find yourself asking, how is one double chest going to store all of my mob's farm's loot? The answer is that it won't. We need better storage. Be sure you subscribe because in the next episode, we're putting together automatic storage for the mob farm. I hope you found this video informative and helpful. If you enjoyed it, please be sure to hit that like button, subscribe for future content, and if you are feeling really generous, please join us on Patreon or become a YouTube member. Your support means the world to me, and I can't do it without you. So, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for watching. Thank you for supporting the channel. Stay happy, stay healthy, and above all, stay crazy.